So something shocking is happening in New South Wales. Baby girls are literally being killed on account of their gender. A new bill is being introduced to stop this. Now, you would think the feminists would be on our side, but cue the outrage because we've dared go after abortion. They should be on the side of saving these little baby girls, but they love abortion so much that they're getting desperate. They're throwing everything at this. They're calling it racist. They're calling me racist against Indians, which is interesting. They're also calling all of us racist, all of you guys too. But here's the thing, even India and China admit they've got a problem and are doing something about sex-selective abortion, but the white privileged elite women who are part of the pro-abortion movement here, they don't want to do anything to save the little brown girls who are being killed on account of their gender. So what's really going on? We're going to unpack that. That's today on The Dr. Jo Show. So before we get into today's episode, which is going to be a whole lot of fun, can I please ask that you subscribe to our channel? If you're new here, please make sure you hit that subscribe button. YouTube is not showing our videos to people, so you need to subscribe in order to see them. So John Ruddick is introducing a bill on Wednesday this week to ban sex-selective abortion in New South Wales. Now, this reared its ugly head in 2019 when abortion up to birth was being introduced. Tanya Davies at the time said, we need something to protect the girls. We need to protect girls from sex-selective abortion. They're being killed in New South Wales. The left-wing media establishment, all of the pro-abortionists, they just went nuts. So you'd think the feminists would be on the side of Tanya Davies and would be willing to create an exception, because this isn't preventing anyone from accessing abortion. If you've got a medical reason, you can still get it in New South Wales for any reason. All it was going to do was present abortion for sex-selective reasons, which you would think everybody could get behind, but they couldn't. And now, though, we have incontrovertible proof that this is happening. So in 2019, people said to Tanya Davies, you're just making this up, this is racial stereotyping, it's not really a problem in New South Wales. But now we have incontrovertible proof that it is happening. We had the Latrobe studies, we had data from SBS, they'd commissioned research. All of this had proven that girls are being killed in ethnic communities in Australia on account of their gender. Then now we have the Edith Cowan study of over 2.1 million births in New South Wales and WA, and it conclusively shows that Indian and Chinese girls in particular are being killed on account of their gender. The parity of boy to girl for mothers who were born in Australia, England, Canada, New Zealand, no issue. It's parity. Girls aren't being killed by those mothers, but Indian and Chinese mums and some other Southeast Asian countries, there's definitely a boy bias. They're killing the girls. And we're seeing this in particular in that study when a family has two girls already. The chance that there will be a third girl is just eliminated by sex-selective abortion. So, in Chinese families, for the third child, 134 boys are being born to 100 girls. 131 boys in Indian families are being born to 100 girls. So that's telling you that there's a huge amount of girls being killed. And the study actually says, we provide the most compelling observational evidence to date of male-biased sex ratio at birth amongst overseas-born mothers, which appears to be attributed to prenatal sex determination followed by selective abortion of females. So this study specifically looked at, are girls being killed because they're girls? And it found yes. It said we've got evidence of that. It's indirect evidence. Direct evidence would be actually asking people about what they did, and it's impossible to get. So this is the most compelling evidence we've got that shows us this is happening. Now, the response from the left who love abortion is so predictable, from these feminazis who say they're on the side of women but actually actively support the killing of girls because they're girls. Now, let's remember, in Australia, every other form of sex discrimination is illegal. You can't pay a woman less because she's a woman. You can't not hire a woman because she's a woman. You can't even ask her if she's about to have babies or thinking about having babies at the interview, because that's discrimination against women. Even in IVF, it is illegal to have sex-selective IVF, to say to the doctor, I want a girl, so make me girl embryos. They don't let you do that. You cannot do that. And yet with abortion, it is legal in New South Wales. And Claire Pullen, who's one of the main pioneers of abortion up to birth in New South Wales, this is what she says about sex-selective abortion. She says, asking doctors to assess whether an abortion was being performed on the basis of gender on those grounds would essentially require them to undertake racial stereotyping. Now, John Ruddick, when we did the speaking tour in New South Wales, he called this. He said they've got no substantive arguments against this anymore. They can't say it's no evidence because we've got a really good study that shows us it's happening, it's a problem, on top of all of the other evidence that's preceded it. He said the only thing they can do, and this is what the left does when they go crazy, he says they cry racism. And he's called it, it's right. That's the only thing that can say, which is that, this is going to lead to racial stereotyping. It's not racial stereotyping to make something illegal just because some races happen to do it. Female genital mutilation is illegal in Australia because we recognise that that's just a gross thing to do to little girls. Like it doesn't make you racist to ban an abhorrent practice, to make it illegal. And what's so ironic here is that India and China themselves have recognised they've got a problem with sex-selective abortion. And we're going to get to that in a minute. We're going to tell you what's happening in those countries, that the feminazis in Australia are so against, even though these countries themselves have recognised they've got a problem. And yet these feminazis, this rich elite group of privileged white women like Claire Pullen, like Penny Sharp, like Abigail Bourne, all of these women who are going to come out against John Ruddick's sex-selective bill, they're going to do that. They're going to vote against it. They're going to come out against it. They want to protect their right to access abortion. They don't care about the little brown girls that are being killed just on account of their gender. It's interesting that the same radical lefties who call racism, who cry racism every time there's a conversation on immigration and people say we need to pause our immigration, we need sustainable immigration, or we need to stop immigration, they just call that racist. And yet these are the very same people who, when we have evidence that because of immigration we've got some abhorrent cultural practices coming in that we need to stop, they cry racism again. I mean, make it make sense, because in India and China, they've recognised they've got a problem. In India, it's illegal to abort a baby because of their sex. They have actually outlawed it because they want to fight female infanticide. Let's break down how this works. So for decades now, India knew it was facing a serious issue. Millions of girls are being aborted just because of their gender, because families preferred boys. This has led to skewed sex ratios and widespread social problems. And, I'm Indian myself. I was born in England and then we immigrated here. But I know in my sort of broader family, there was definitely a preference for my brother, my older brother, because he was a boy. And it used to frustrate me that the grandmothers would like him more than me just because he was a boy. It is there in Indian communities and families. And the Indian government has recognised that for many years, that skewed sex ratio is a problem. And in 1994, they passed the Preconception and Prenatal Diagnostic Techniques Act. And this not only banned sex-selective abortion, it actually banned finding out the gender of the child in utero, because that's how much they wanted to save baby girls. That's how serious they are in India about stopping this. And in 2002, the law was strengthened through another set of key reforms because they recognised they still had ongoing cultural issues with this preference for sons. And that's the thing, when you've got like a deep-seated embedded preference for sons, you need proactive laws to create normative change, to drive it, to show that this is really bad, we're not going to do this, we don't want to do this. You're still going to have people that violate the law. In India, there's still a massive issue with sex-selective abortion, but the fact that the law is leading does have cultural impacts. And so, for example, the 2002 reforms provided stricter regulation of clinics, so more rigorous licensing rules on abortion clinics and for ultrasound and diagnostic centres. And so there can be no disclosure of fetal sex, and there's been greater monitoring to make sure that that's not happening. There's a ban on gender-based advertising, so abortion clinics cannot promote sex selection services, and ultrasound clinics cannot advertise that they will tell you the gender. There's heavy penalties, so doctors and parents who caught violating the law, violating the ban, they can face up to 3 years in prison, fines, and cancellation of medical licences for doctors. There's also expanded enforcement powers. They've got enforcement bodies where authorities have been given clearer powers to weed this out. So this is really powerful stuff. And in India, they've recognised they've got a problem. They've got proactive legislative and policy measures to address it. Even China, which has had the one-child policy, that really vile policy that led to millions of babies being killed, particularly girls, often forcibly by the government. I remember I was at Oxford and one of my close friends there, she was doing a research project, her PhD, into orphanages in China. These little babies, particularly girls, have been discarded and abandoned because of the one-child policy. And the stories she would tell from that empirical work, they're still with me today. And so even China, this place that has no respect for human rights, even they are trying to protect little baby girls from being killed on account of their gender. So in China, prenatal sex determination is prohibited for non-medical purposes. So if you've got a gene that particularly carries a risk of health issues for a particular gender, then you can find out that's a medical reason. But everybody else, they cannot find out if their baby is a girl or a boy. Ultrasound and other prenatal tests cannot be used to reveal fetal sex unless medically necessary. Sex-selective abortion is illegal. And doctors who perform sex-selective abortions in China can face legal penalties, including fines, license revocation, or criminal charges. In China, there were policy measures such as monitoring the clinics, public campaigns to promote the value of girls, and even family planning policies, which since 2015, when they shifted to a two-child policy, the authorities have focused on balancing sex ratios. And even in other countries like the UK or Northern Ireland, they actually make sex-selective abortion illegal by the very nature of their abortion laws. So let me explain what I mean. In the UK, Northern Ireland, it's illegal to abort a baby solely on the basis of their gender. And in England, Wales and Scotland, abortion's regulated under the Abortion Act of 1967, and it allows abortion for certain conditions. So up to 24 weeks, you can have an abortion if continuing the pregnancy would pose a greater risk to the woman's physical or mental health. After 24 weeks, you can only have an abortion if the baby is severely disabled or to save the mother's life. And so here's the thing, abortion cannot be carried out for gender selection because the criteria both before 24 weeks and after 24 weeks requires a medical reason. And so doctors must certify that the procedure meets legal grounds. They collect information on this. The doctor has to certify the reason for the abortion. If a doctor knowingly performs an abortion just because of the baby's sex, it can be considered a fraudulent certification, which is a criminal offence. And doctors cannot just lose their licence but be criminally charged. Northern Ireland used to have much more restrictive abortion laws. They used to be much more pro-life. And sadly, in 2019, that changed as a result of a campaign by pro-abortion activists. Now in Ireland, abortion is legal up to 12 weeks for any reason. And after 12 weeks, abortion is only permitted if it would pose a risk to the woman's physical or mental health, or they are fetal anomalies. So in both of those countries, you have to have a medical reason for an abortion, which the doctor has to sign off on. If it's sex selection, the doctor could go to jail. And so it's illegal. It is effectively illegal in those countries. But now let's contrast that with New South Wales abortion law. Remember, this was also changed in 2019 and it was introduced up to birth. And so in the Abortion Reform Act 2019, Section 5, what we can see is that all you need for an abortion before 22 weeks is this. It says a person who is a prescribed health practitioner may perform a termination on a person who is not more than 22 weeks pregnant. That's it. So you can have an abortion for any reason prior to 22 weeks. You go to your doctor and they have to give it to you. It doesn't matter what you tell them. You could literally have an abortion on race. You could say the guy I slept with is black, I don't want to have a black baby. Like you can say I want to kill my baby because she's a girl. There's literally nothing in this law that says you cannot, because it says a person who is a prescribed health practitioner may perform a termination on a person who is not more than 22 weeks. There's no requirement for a medical reason. There's nothing in there. After 22 weeks, there are requirements, but let's face it, anyone that wants to kill their baby based on their gender is doing it before 22 weeks. They're doing it in the first trimester as a result of the NIP test, so they're doing it around the 11, 12-week mark, because you can get this test now, the NIP test, which can tell you the gender of your child, or they're doing it after the 20-week ultrasound. They've worked out their baby's a girl, they kill the baby. This is happening in Australia. There is nothing in the law to prevent it, which is why we need John Ruddick's bill. Okay, so it's not racist. That's just a gaslight. That when they tell you that you're racist because you support John Ruddick's bill, you just know that's not truth. Even the countries where the main migrant communities in Australia that are killing the babies because they're girls, even their origin countries, India and China, are doing something about it. So it's not racist. Don't let them tell you that you are racist because you support John Ruddick's bill. But some people might make the point, well, having a law isn't actually going to be effective, that it's not going to do anything. And so Bambi the Naked Chihuahua, I love these tags, these Instagram handles that people have. She wrote on my page, and I don't think this was, I think she's on side. I don't think she was trying to diss the law. I think this was a genuine question. So Bambi the Naked Chihuahua wrote, how do they plan to stop it though? Because couldn't they still legally get an abortion but not disclose that as the reason? So this is it's going to happen anyway. We don't need a law. But I think what I'd like you guys to think about is this, murder happens anyway, rape happens anyway, domestic violence happens anyway, but we have laws. We have employers that exploit people, that don't pay workers the correct wage, that don't pay equal pay, but we have laws governing these things. Laws make a difference. They have a normative value. They communicate what is acceptable and what's not acceptable. And if we know that something really bad is happening, we have to proactively make it illegal to communicate how seriously we take this. This law, John Ruddick's law, puts the onus on doctors, and it creates the possibility of significant financial penalties, but even 5 years jail time for doctors that get involved in this. And, it's likely that some immigrant families would come to Australia, they'd go to their doctor and they'll ask for a sex-selective abortion. We know that this has happened. We know that Dr. Mark Hobart in Victoria, he was approached by a Sikh couple who had just done the ultrasound scan. They rushed over to see him and they said, we can't have this baby, it's a girl. It was the man, the husband that said this, the woman was silent. And for a future baby, she did not find the gender of a child because she didn't want to face that pressure. And yet, Dr. Mark Hobart was censored in Melbourne by the medical board because he was subjected to an investigation because he didn't sign off on a sex-selective abortion. Now, that baby girl got killed because she was a girl because a butcher at the Murray Stopes abortion clinic did it. So that baby girl wasn't safe, but we know that this is happening. And so some immigrant families, even if we have a ban on sex-selective abortion, they won't know about it because legal literacy can be quite low. They'll go to their GP and they'll ask for it. And the onus will be on the GP to make sure that doesn't happen. So laws have a normative effect. It will also weed out anybody that explicitly asks for it. And I think there are people who are going to do that. But the other thing we have to think about is laws are made all the time in situations where we are uncertain about our ability to enforce them. And the left, they do this all the time. So think about the bill that the Minns government passed, and I'll put a link to a video down below about the Minns government banning prayer, and you'll have to check it out because it's a really important video. Everybody has to see that. But earlier in this term of Parliament, the Minns government passed the Conversion Practices Ban Act 2024, and it came into force on April 4 of this year. And it bans people from praying with someone who's struggling with their sexual identity, with someone who's gay, with someone who asks a prayer about their sexuality. Mother can't pray with her own child. A pastor can't pray with a person at their church if asked to in New South Wales because the New South Wales government has banned prayer. Now, they can't police prayer. Like they can't be in my home and see what I do with my own child. They can't necessarily be in private prayer conversations between a pastor and a parishioner, but they're banning it anyway. They know, the left knows that these laws have significant cultural force and influence. And so we have to pass John Ruddick's bill. Those of you who are ambivalent about it, I want to wake you up. This is such an important first step in our fight to make abortion unthinkable. We have to pass this bill. We have to do everything to pass it. And so you know where I'm going. If you've been watching this channel, the first thing we need to do is turn up to John's rally on Wednesday. It's a 5:30 outside the Parliament. This is the day the bill's being introduced. We know the mainstream media is not going to want to cover this. They just don't. The first rally we did against the Amanda Conn Green's bill, they didn't cover it. We had a couple of thousand people, maybe about 5,000, but they didn't cover it. We didn't make a big enough noise. The second rally, they were forced to cover. We blocked Macquarie Street. We had 10,000 people, 6 bishops turned up, so many church leaders. That's actually the level of noise we need. And I know activism is uncomfortable for a lot of you. I know that a lot of Christians in particular would struggle with it. I know that a lot of you, like mums, dads, even if you're atheist, agnostic, whatever, you can be anything on this channel. I don't mind. The thing that unites us is that we're against killing babies. And, you know, I know that a lot of you don't go to rallies, but I need you to make the effort to be there this Wednesday at 5:30 outside Parliament. Take an hour of your time, bring your kids. I bring my kids to my rallies. In fact, I was talking to a school mum the other day and she said, Jo, I came to your last rally in South Australia. She said, I wish I'd brought my son who's in reception. That's kindergarten if you're in New South Wales. And she said, I wish I'd brought my son. I saw your children there and I saw all the other kids and I realised how good it would have been for him to have seen it. And so that's my encouragement to you. Make the rally a priority. Get behind John Ruddick's bill. Don't tell me that, you can't support the bill because you just want to end all abortion. I know that you want to end all abortion. I want to end all abortion. We all want to end all abortion. That's what unites us. But if we don't start here, where do we start? If we don't pass this, how do we pass anything? And so I need you to be there. I need you to support this campaign. Thank you for all of your support. Thank you for watching today. That's Today on The Dr. Jo Show.